Have you ever been to a circus? Well, forget about the oddities you might have seen, because back in the day, it was a whole new world of freaks, quite literally. This wasn't just the realm of jugglers, clowns, and trapeze artists. Way back, the circus was home to extraordinary people who defied the bounds of normal with their unique appearances and rare conditions. There's a reason why their performances weren't dubbed as circuses, but freak shows of some sort. Join us as we take a look at 15 circus freaks that actually existed. Number 15. The Woman with Four Legs. Josephine Myrtle Corbin, born way back in 1868, was an American performer who made waves in the world of sideshows thanks to her unforgettable physical uniqueness. She was born with dipygus, a rare condition that gave her two sets of legs and pelvises, all because her body split into dual axes during development. It left her with two pelvises side by side, one paired with her outer leg and another with a smaller inner leg. While she could move those inner legs, they didn't quite have the strength to support her for walking. Myrtle was born in Tennessee to her parents, William and Nancy, whose lives were turned upside down when their little marvel entered the world. William was 25, Nancy was 34, and the arrival of their one-of-a-kind daughter brought a mix of fascination and anxiety. Doctors speculated that if Myrtle had arrived breech, it might have been a deadly situation for both mother and child. But Myrtle was a fighter, thriving in her first few weeks and hitting 10 pounds within her first month. Her parents felt both joy and worry, happy she was doing well but struggling financially. It didn't take long for folks to get curious, and before she was even 2 months old, the Corbins were letting people come and see their four-legged little one for a small fee. As Myrtle grew, she adapted to life in the spotlight. Her inner legs didn't develop fully, and her right foot had a clubbed appearance, with her smaller legs only having 3 toes each. For the next 10 years, William and Myrtle hit the road, showcasing her remarkable figure across fairs, sideshows, and dime museums. By 14, Myrtle was not just a star, but a well-paid one, earning an impressive $250 per week, a small fortune at the time. And when she reached 41 in 1909, she wowed audiences at Huber's Museum, showcasing herself as the four-legged girl from Cleburne, Texas, with all 4 legs dressed in matching socks and shoes. By then, she was pulling in a staggering $450 weekly. In 1928, Myrtle faced a setback. A skin infection on her right leg turned out to be erysipelas, a type of strep infection. Tragically, just 1 week later, on May 6, 1928, Myrtle passed away, leaving behind a special legacy. She was a mother and a performer, and she excelled at both of her jobs. Yet like the next performer on our list, her life was hard too. Number 14. The Original Elephant Man. Joseph Carey Merrick was born on August 5, 1862, in Leicester, England, and when he arrived, there was no hint of the journey he was about to go on. A healthy little guy at birth, Merrick's life took a turn around the age of 5. His skin started developing rough, grayish patches that seemed straight out of a sci-fi story. His parents were convinced it had something to do with a freaky incident his mother had during pregnancy. She swore that the sight of a stampeding elephant had marked him, hence the nickname that would stick with him for life, the Elephant Man. As Merrick grew up, his body underwent more drastic changes, with his face and head slowly becoming covered with unusual lumps, bumps, and a mix of bony and fleshy growths. Yet despite these changes, Merrick tried to make the best of things, attending the local school and attempting a somewhat normal life. His father, who ran a small shop selling hats and other haberdashery, even sent Merrick out on the streets with a peddler's license to sell goods. Unfortunately, with his looks attracting fear instead of customers, Merrick barely sold anything. People either steered clear or couldn't understand him because his speech had become difficult to follow. His father, not understanding the uphill battle Merrick faced, grew angry and eventually resorted to physical punishment. That was the breaking point for Merrick, who left home and briefly stayed with an uncle before ending up in the Leicester Union Workhouse at 17. Life in the workhouse was no walk in the park, but with nowhere else to go, Merrick had to endure it. After a while, though, he decided to take control of his narrative. In 1884, he connected with Sam Torr, who owned a music hall in Leicester, to explore the idea of joining a human oddities show. Soon enough, Merrick was traveling around as the Elephant Man, half elephant, drawing crowds in Leicester and Nottingham. By November, Merrick took his show to London, where he'd wear a veil and cape to keep his face out of view. Though that didn't stop mobs from crowding around him when he was out. In London, Merrick's exhibit set up shop right across from the London Hospital, where curious doctors and med students couldn't resist popping in to learn more about his condition. By 1885, though, Britain's fascination with freak shows was starting to die down. Merrick and his managers decided to try their luck in Belgium, hoping for fresh crowds. However, that move flopped, and Merrick's manager even skipped town with his savings, leaving Merrick completely broke. Desperate, Merrick found his way back to England in June of 1886, where he was mobbed by people at Liverpool Street Station and ultimately taken into police custody. Eventually, his story resonated with people, and they came together to give him a secure retirement life. Now, onto a similar story of being remarkable. Number 13. The Human Caterpillar. Prince Randian, known by a string of unforgettable nicknames, the Snake Man, the Human Torso, the Human Caterpillar, was the kind of sideshow legend who left crowds speechless. When the lights hit him, all 3 feet of him, there was no going back. People were hit with a wave of shock and awe. Whatever they expected, Randian was something else entirely. Picture this: no arms, just little shoulder stubs and barely any legs. Draped in a red and white striped bodysuit, he looked more like an oversized caterpillar than a person, which Barnum, his showman boss, capitalized on big time, and Randian owned it. His big act, rolling and lighting a cigarette, without any hands. Yep, you read that right. The crowd would watch, jaws dropped, as Randian grabbed a cigarette with his mouth, lined it up just right, then, using only his teeth, struck a match. He'd bring that cigarette to the flame, take a satisfying puff, and then blow out the match along with a cloud of smoke, totally unbothered. People lost it every time. It wasn't just a trick, it was a statement, a performance, and an absolute masterclass in mouth-only coordination. Yet he didn't stop there. Randian had a whole range of talents up his sleeve, well, metaphorically. Over the years, he taught himself to paint and even write, balancing a brush or pen in his teeth and using his lips to guide each stroke. Cool, right? Despite his physical deformities, Randian lived a very normal life with his wife and kids, just like the next performers on our list. Number 12. The Siamese Twins. Chang and Eng Bunker were born in Thailand in 1811, joined at the chest by a small piece of cartilage. Their fame skyrocketed when they started touring in Europe and the United States as the Siamese Twins. Their story hit the local newspapers like a whirlwind, which helped the twins in gaining public sympathy. For years, Chang and Eng toured with several freak show masters, including Barnum. However, the twins realized that their bosses were robbing them of their hard-earned money, so they decided to tour by themselves. In their shows, they'd often show their high levels of athleticism and even spoke English flawlessly. In 1839, after 10 years of raking in cash on the road, the twins decided it was time to settle down. They chose a quiet life near Mount Airy, North Carolina, where they became American citizens, bought slaves, and married 2 local sisters. The twins were dedicated family men. Between the 2 of them, they fathered 21 children. When they returned to touring, several of their kids even joined the family act. The twins figured out a unique way to manage their households. Each brother had his own home, and they would switch back and forth, staying with each family in 3-day intervals. Life seemed steady, but the end of the Civil War changed everything. They lost a chunk of their fortune along with the slaves they had owned. Chang's health began to decline, and one day he passed away in his sleep. Eng, still connected to his brother, died just hours later at the age of 62. During the autopsy, doctors discovered that their livers were fused together at the ligament connecting their chest. Their story of resilience would resonate perfectly with the next performer on our list. Number 11. The Living Skeleton. Born in Massachusetts in 1841, Isaac Sprague lived his life as the living skeleton. He looked like an average kid until he started shedding weight around 12. Medical professionals couldn't explain his extreme thinness, so Sprague tried to do odd jobs, yet due to his physical appearance, he was sent home packing multiple times. In 1865, a carnival owner spotted Isaac Sprague and offered him a gig. At first, Isaac wasn't too keen on the idea, but then it hit him. Why not make a living off his unusual appearance? So he set his sights on the entertainment capital of the day, Barnum's American Museum in Manhattan. With an agent by his side, Isaac walked up to Barnum, who casually sized him up and said, "Pretty lean guy, where'd you find him?" Barnum clearly saw dollar signs, offering Isaac a sweet deal, $80 a week, which would be worth around $1,320 today. Soon, Sprague joined the lineup of bearded ladies and towering giants, thrilling crowds who flocked to see the living skeleton. Though fame as the Thin Man brought him steady attention, the whole circus scene didn't really excite him, and he tried to escape it more than once. Yet with his weight stuck below 50 pounds and his health declining, Isaac had few options. At times, he even had to carry a flask of milk around his neck to keep his energy up and avoid passing out mid-performance. However, the show went on, as in the case of General Tom Thumb. Number 10. General Tom Thumb. Standing just 25 inches tall at age 5, Charles Sherwood Stratton, or General Tom Thumb, became a global sensation. Lovingly known as Charlie, the kid never went through a formal education because his life took a surprising turn at just 4 years old. That's when he caught the eye of showbiz legend Barnum, who took him under his wing and taught him to sing, dance, and mimic famous personalities of the time. It all started one chilly November night in 1842, when Barnum was back in his home state of Connecticut. He'd heard rumors about an incredibly tiny child in the area and decided he had to see for himself. Already known for showcasing giants at his American Museum in New York City, Barnum knew a unique star when he saw one. So he struck a deal with Charlie's dad, who was a carpenter, offering to pay $3 a week if he could bring the boy to New York to join his act. Barnum didn't waste any time. He headed straight back to New York, ready to turn his new discovery into a sensation. Charlie and his mom even moved into an apartment right in the museum where Barnum helped teach him the ropes of performing. He described young Charlie as a quick learner with a natural sense of humor, always up for a laugh. The two bonded in a way that went beyond work. They'd stay friends for years. Charlie soon became a hit in New York City. On stage, he played all kinds of characters, from Napoleon to a Scottish Highlander, with Barnum often joining him as the straight man for laughs. The act became such a success that Barnum eventually upped the pay, shelling out $50 a week, a huge sum for the 1840s. Charlie's career only soared from there. He once performed for Queen Victoria at the palace and was Abraham Lincoln's guest. His fame soared even higher when he married Lavinia Warren in a grand ceremony that drew thousands. The next person on our list would rival his fame, but for all the wrong reasons. Number 9. The Lobster Boy. Grady Stiles Jr., better known as the Lobster Boy, belonged to a family with a genetic condition called ectrodactyly, which gave their hands a claw-like appearance. From a young age, Stiles was part of the Lobster Family show. According to some reports, Stiles was only 7 when he joined his father's circus. Yet things took a dark turn as Stiles became infamous for his violent temper and drinking. Stiles struggled with alcoholism and often took out his frustrations on his family. Living with ectrodactyly, a condition that meant he couldn't walk, he got around using his hands and arms rather than relying on a wheelchair, which he only occasionally used. This unique way of moving around built up his upper body strength, and when mixed with his fiery temper and alcohol-fueled outbursts, it turned him into a real threat to those around him. He even shot his daughter's fiancé, leading to a conviction for third-degree murder and a sentence of house arrest. Now onto the next, far more peaceful performer on our list. Number 8. The Three-Legged Man. Born in Sicily in 1889, with 3 legs, 4 feet, and 16 toes, Francesco Lentini was an outcast but found acceptance under the circus tent. Lentini's life took him from city to city, even hitting the London scene back in 1897. At just 8 years old, he was discovered by a man named Magnano, who ran a traveling puppet show and invited him to perform in Middletown. Soon, Lentini's entire family packed up and moved to the United States. It wasn't long before he entered the sideshow world, taking on the stage name The Great Lentini and joining the famous Ringling Brothers Circus. By the time he turned 30, he had earned United States citizenship and had built a showbiz career that would stretch over 4 decades. Lentini performed with all the big names: Barnum and Bailey, Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show, you name it. He was so admired by his fellow performers that he even earned the nickname The King. When he was younger, Lentini had a trick that wowed audiences every time. Using his third leg, he would kick a football across the stage, earning him the playful title, the three-legged football player. You might recognize the wonders of Lentini from the critically acclaimed movie, The Greatest Showman. Number 7. The Human Unicorn. In the mysterious hills of Manchuria, China, lived Wang, the human unicorn, who had an unusual feature sprouting from the back of his head. Back in 1930, a Chinese farmer from Manchukuo caught the eye of an expatriate Russian banker who stumbled upon something truly bizarre. The farmer, who went by Wang, or sometimes Weng, seemed like an everyday guy, except for one unforgettable detail. He had a 14-inch horn jutting out from the back of his head like a twisted spire. Fascinated, the Russian snapped a photo and sent it straight to Robert Ripley, the mastermind behind Believe It or Not. Ripley, who was always on the lookout for unique people to showcase, quickly made a big offer. He promised a massive cash reward for anyone who could bring Wang to his auditorium, where all things strange took center stage. Yet Wang's story soon took a mysterious turn. By the early 1930s, he disappeared completely, leaving his bizarre story shrouded in mystery. Unlike him, the next person on our list is pretty well known. Number 6. The Pinhead. Dubbed the Monkey Girl, the last of the Aztecs, and often just called a pinhead or a freak, Schlitzie became one of the most unforgettable sideshow performers of the early 1900s. Schlitzie's fame hit a new high in 1932 with a role in the notorious film Freaks, which took viewers behind the scenes of circus life, blending love, betrayal, and sideshow oddities, Schlitzie among them. While details about Schlitzie's early life are sketchy, it's believed he was born in 1901, possibly in the Bronx, New York. Schlitzie had a condition called microcephaly, which left him with an unusually small brain, skull, and body, a condition that usually occurs from birth but can sometimes develop later. For Schlitzie, this condition shaped his entire life. He spent his career with nearly every major circus of the time, from the Dobrach International Circus to the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey, the Tom Mix Circus, and the Clyde Beatty Circus. Interestingly, Schlitzie often performed on stage dressed as a woman, though he was biologically male. While this may have started as a gimmick, it became a defining part of his act. Schlitzie's performances and his unique persona drew crowds for decades, but it was his role in Freaks that really launched him to pop culture legend status. After his film debut, Schlitzie continued his life on the road, performing with sideshows. The circus world was his whole life, so much so that in 1936, George Surtees, a chimp trainer with the Tom Mix Circus, actually became Schlitzie's legal guardian. Surtees treated Schlitzie with genuine care, almost like his own child, a relationship that seemed to bring both of them happiness, until Surtees passed away in 1965. Following Surtees' death, Schlitzie took on a few final gigs with the Dobrich International Circus, then eventually settled into a quieter life in Los Angeles. Even in retirement, Schlitzie's love for performing didn't fade. He'd entertain passers-by at MacArthur Park, feeding pigeons and ducks and making people smile. It was a simple but fitting way for him to enjoy his remaining years until his death in 1971. Despite his fame, Schlitzie never had the security of a real home or wealth. When he passed, he couldn't even afford a headstone. Yet fans remembered him, and in 2007, one raised enough money to place a black stone marker at his final resting place in Los Angeles. Now, on to the next story of resilience. Number 5. The Bear Woman. Julia Pastrana came into the world in the mountains of western Mexico back in 1834, and right from the start, her mother was uneasy about her unusual looks. Local legend had it that shape-shifting creatures called the Nahuali, or werewolves, were behind strange births or deformities. When Julia's mother saw her for the first time, she reportedly whispered that name, convinced something supernatural was at play. Not long after, her mother either left their community or was cast out. Just 2 years later, a group of Mexican herders searching for a lost cow stumbled upon Julia and her mother hiding out in a mountain cave. They brought them to the nearest city, where Julia ended up in an orphanage. Despite being almost completely covered in black hair, Julia's sweet nature and intelligence made her a local curiosity. She eventually caught the attention of the state governor, who adopted her, not as a daughter, but as an amusement and housemaid. She stayed with him until she was 20, when she set out to return to her original tribe. However, somewhere along her journey back, an American showman known as Rates persuaded her to join the sideshow circuit instead. From there, Julia became one of the most talked about human curiosities of the 19th century, with titles like the Ape Woman, the Bear Woman, and the Baboon Lady trailing her wherever she went. She made her debut in December 1854 at Broadway's Gothic Hall in New York City. In a red dress, Julia sang Spanish folk songs and danced the Highland Fling. People came in droves to see her, though it wasn't really about her singing or dancing. They were there to stare. They marveled at her hairy face, prominent jaw, large lips, and broad, flat nose. Posters called her the Bear Woman from the wilds of Mexico, and some even compared her to an ape. Julia's life had become a racist ordeal, as people dubbed her as half-human. The racist tropes around indigenous people took the best of her, and even as a married woman, her husband pushed her to keep up with public exhibits. In a far more harrowing move, the dead bodies of Julia and her son, who suffered from a similar condition, were kept in museums for people to see. The exploited woman only got a proper burial in February 2013. Number 4. The Ohio Bigfoot Lady. Born in 1860, Fanny Mills was the youngest in a British family that emigrated from Thacum, Sussex to Sandusky, Ohio, when she was just a child. At first, everything about Fanny seemed normal, but soon enough, her parents noticed unusual swelling and growth in her legs and feet. Much like the tale of the Elephant Man, where his mother's encounter with an elephant was blamed for his deformities, Fanny's parents believed that her condition stemmed from her mother's contact with a sick horse while pregnant. Yet, of course, neither story is true. While doctors never diagnosed her during her lifetime, Fanny is now thought to have had Milroy's disease, a genetic disorder causing extreme swelling in the lower limbs. By the time Fanny reached her late 20s, her feet had become enormous, measuring a staggering size 30 in the United States, which has no equivalent in European sizes. Despite the medical mystery, Fanny spent most of her life at home in Sandusky. Her father, deeply protective, kept the press and circus recruiters at bay. However, in 1885, everything changed. After her father's passing, Fanny, now 25, decided to take charge of her own life. She traveled 500 miles to New York City with a friend and found work at the Bowery Museum. Her act was simple but captivating. Sitting on a chair, she'd lift her skirt to reveal her immense legs and feet, a sight made even more astonishing by her petite 50-kilogram frame. As word spread, the New York Times began running articles about the girl from Ohio with the world's biggest feet. The Bowery Museum seized the opportunity, launching ad campaigns that highlighted her unusual features, even offering a hefty dowry to anyone willing to marry her. While it's unclear if Fanny enjoyed the spotlight or the museum's relentless publicity stunts, she'd become a true sensation in her time. And oh, before you ask, she did find a loving husband at the end of the day. Up next, we have another remarkable female performer on our list. Number 3. The Bird Girl. Born in 1880 in Georgia, Minnie Woolsey's life story is an enigma with many tales surrounding her unusual appearance and condition. Most sources believe Minnie had Virchow-Seckel syndrome, a rare condition known as bird-headed dwarfism, which is marked by a tiny head, short stature, a beak-like nose, receding jaw, and some cognitive limitations. Alongside these features, Minnie was almost entirely bald, blind, and toothless, and wore large, thick glasses that only amplified her distinctive look. She spent her early years in a Georgia asylum until, as the story goes, a showman noticed her unique appearance and saw an opportunity for the sideshow stage. Minnie soon began performing under the stage name Minnie Ha Ha, dressed in a Native American costume. This character was likely a playful nod to the Aztec children's exhibits popular in years past, combined with a reference to North Carolina's Minnehaha Falls. Though she was hesitant at first, Minnie grew to embrace the sideshow life, delighting audiences as she danced and energetically babbled in her own enthusiastic way. In 1932, Minnie's fame reached new heights when she appeared in the iconic film Freaks under the role of Cuckoo the Bird Girl. In one of the film's most unforgettable scenes, Minnie, dressed in feathers with a tiny plumed cap and bird feet, performed a lively shimmy on top of a table at a chaotic wedding feast. Her quirky, captivating performance became one of Freaks' most memorable moments. The next performer on our list also came from the life and soul of the infamous movie. Number 2. The Half-Boy Wonder. Johnny Eck, born with sacral agenesis, did not have fully developed legs, but that didn't stop him from shining. An artist and musician, he performed incredible tricks on stage and even famously starred in the movie Freaks. Paired with magician Roger Ritz, Eck's act saw him cut in half, becoming one of the most iconic tricks of the era. The last performer on our list didn't appear on Freaks, but carved a legacy of his own. Number 1. The Lion-Faced Man. Stefan Bibrowski, famously known as Lionel the Lion-Faced Man, was born in 1890 near Warsaw, Poland, with hypertrichosis, a condition that causes extreme hair growth all over the body. His mother believed his unusual appearance was linked to a frightening incident she had witnessed while pregnant, a lion attacking his father. Though that story had no scientific basis, it added to the mystery surrounding Stefan's life. When Stefan was just 4 years old, his mother entrusted him to a German showman named Sedlmayr, who gave him the stage name Lionel the Lion-Faced Boy, and showcased him throughout Europe. By 1901, Stefan and Sedlmayr were traveling across the Atlantic, where he caught the attention of the Barnum and Bailey Circus in the United States. Stefan captivated audiences with his gymnastics and his multilingual abilities, chatting fluently in 5 languages. Despite his success on the sideshow circuit, a friend once shared that Stefan had dreams of becoming a dentist, though he found the world of sideshows to be more financially rewarding. In 1920, Stefan moved to New York City and became a popular figure at Coney Island's Dreamland Circus, where he performed for large crowds. Later in life, he returned to Germany, where he reportedly passed away in 1932 from a heart attack. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.